Hello horror hounds. Of all the supernatural entities we can get in horror movies, my personal opinion is that the most poorly served of all of them is the werewolf. There's tons of great vampire movies. There's some real cream of the crop, ghost movies. Zombies are ten a penny, but there are some classic zombie movies. There's just in my opinion, a smattering of really great werewolf movies, and I don't know why it's so hard to get werewolves right. So I was really, when I got this, really rooting for Howl. I'd intended to see it last year in the cinema, just didn't get round to it. That's on me. I've watched this twice before doing this video because I just wanted to make sure that my criticisms of it were valid. In short, I think this is a really good, fun werewolf movie. Frustratingly, I think it could have been a superb werewolf movie. The movie's been somewhat reductively referred to as Werewolves on a Train, which isn't particularly fair to it. The setup is actually superb, and it's the perfect hook to get you interested if you love these kind of movies. And if you've seen the trailer, it gives you an idea of what the setup is, intrigues you, and actually does its job perfectly. It's set on a late night train, the last train on the timetable, sort of like departing from London round about midnight to reach its destination at 1:32 in the morning, and the train breaks down, or stops at the very least, in the middle of a wooded area, and the small band of people that are stuck on the train find themselves surrounded by creatures who are intent on getting in and eating them. The setting is an enormous strength for the film. The enclosed space of the train sort of ramps up the paranoia and the claustrophobia. There are times when the passengers actually leave the train, but being outside counterintuitively actually sort of escalates that sense of isolation. At night, surrounded by the woodland, you actually start to feel more uneasy when they're outside of the safety of the train than when they're trapped inside. So there's really no escape from the isolation, and there's no escape from the claustrophobia that surrounds them. So you've got a neat little ship in a bottle type story where they're trapped in one location and there's a group of people and they're all in there, and they have to try and survive or figure their way out. If any of you have done manual labour, menial work, low paid work, where you have to deal with members of the public, you are really going to root for our hero Joe, who's the train guard who at the last minute gets put on this double shift to do this one last run at night. He is the working man against everything, downtrodden, put upon, and like I say, if you've ever done jobs like that, there'll be a little turn of the gut in sympathy and empathy for him, and you really will pull for him and want to see him succeed, even before the creatures come along, just against the people he's working for and the people, the public that he's trying to work with whilst he's on the train. And this is one of the areas where the film sort of falls short. Every character is a really broad brushstroke, not really much more than a caricature. I did a list off the top of my head, and I'll just run through them, and I'll give you the little thumbnail sketch of each of them, and you'll know exactly who the entire cast is that we're dealing with. You've got the put upon working man in a menial job, the love interest that he works with. There's a banker, a merchant banker from London who's an arsehole. There's a stroppy teenager. There's a hard-edged businesswoman. There's a fat slob. There's a working class hero in there, a working class guy with a heart of gold. There's an elderly retired couple with nothing in the world but each other. And then you've got your werewolves on the outside. And that's one of the weaknesses of the movie, in that the characters are caricatures rather than there really being anything to them. If the movie could have been a creature feature on one level but had some subtext as well, it could have really pushed it over the edge. The creature stuff and the setup stuff and the jumps and the scares and the kills and all of that stuff has been worked on brilliantly. But this second half of the movie, the second ingredient in the movie, the characters that are in it seem to have been passed over, written in broad strokes, really quickly got through. There's nothing really there to engage with apart from the fact that you want Joe, our hero, to succeed because he's put upon, and you want the banker to die in the most horrific way possible because he is the most unbelievable. He'll wind you up. He's a prick. He's supposed to be, but even then, he's like a pantomime asshole. There's no nuance to the character whatsoever. So the film can't really say anything about these people because they're not really people. The delayed train and everyone stuck on this train. This is why it's so frustrating for me. Is actually just the perfect metaphor for Britain at the moment. And the film could have explored in microcosm that, you know, different aspects of our culture and society trapped in this train carriage together. And we all know that late trains and cancelled trains and stuff like that is basically the bugbear of our entire nation, our rail network. So to just have it as a symbol, as the dilapidated state of Britain, and use it as a magnifying glass to sort of inspect where we're at as a country now, is far too good an opportunity to have passed up. I was wondering whether the movie was trying to deal with that. I mean, after the economic collapse, I don't think it's a coincidence that the most evil character on there is a banker, but it could have been an interrogation of our class system, of our financial situation, the state of Britain today. But because all the characters are so broad they could fit on the side of a barn, there's no subtlety there and there's no subtext to it. The other thing I wondered about what the movie might be trying to investigate, the rail company, the fictional rail company in the movie is called Alpha Trax, Trax, but it's the alpha word that I sort of picked up on when I watched it a second time round, because there are lots of different types of masculinity on display in the movie, and once the pressure cooker of the situation turns on, they butt up against one another. And I think there's also something going on with the wolves. They lose, I suspect, what was their alpha, and massive spoiler, so if you haven't seen it, stop watching from now on. They choose a new alpha to turn by the end of the movie, based, I think, on the behaviour on display whilst our characters are trapped. But as with the potential exploration of our class system in this country, there's no delving into it. There's no subtlety, and these are the aspects of the script that really, and once the creatures hit, you know, you can more or less keep it the same. But if these had been characters, actual people that we were watching in this situation, then the subtext, any sort of message or subtext could have come through just on its own, there to be found if you wanted to find it, or if you just wanted to watch it as a werewolf movie, it was just there. The reason I'm so frustrated and I'm banging on about this, and I apologise, is because I can see the seeds there. I can see the seeds of it. I can almost see the thinking behind it. And the setting is so perfect to do something like this, that why it was just allowed to lie fallow and not followed through, it's annoying. I find it annoying. The film is good fun because the other aspect of the film, which we'll talk about now very briefly, are the werewolves themselves. They're really interesting. The werewolves are really interesting in this. They're bipedal, which I like. Even though American Werewolf in London is hands down my favourite werewolf movie of all time, I do like werewolves upright and on two legs. In fact, I would have quite liked it if they'd have not been referred to as werewolves in the film, if it had just been left that they were creatures. I actually think it harms the movie a little bit that they're referred to as werewolves. They're not very hairy, they're very fleshy. And there seem to be two different classes of werewolf. One is a big, muscular sort of alpha, very orc-like from Lord of the Rings sort of werewolf. And they're like the sledgehammer, and that class doesn't particularly work for me. But you've got the rest of the pack, which are slightly more wiry and less muscular, and there's a very impressive mixture of practical work, of CG work, of animatronics here at play with the werewolves. And when the big sort of orc alphas are in full light, they don't work that much for me, for my mind. They're a good beast, but when you get the others, the rest of the pack, in silhouette or in moonlight, there's some genuine chills. I can't deny that there are some genuine chilling moments in this. The way they're played for power, the weaker ones do act like how pack animals would sort of hunt us. You do get the impression if you were armed with a decent weapon, you would have a good chance of holding off 2, even 3 of these things, because they sort of harry you down and wear you down. They look for a way in, a weakness to exploit. No creature in the wild is just going to charge in and risk potentially fatal injuries. With even a weaker prey animal can flail around and injure you. You can break a leg, pull a muscle, get a cut, get it infected and stuff like that. Creatures in the wild aren't stupid. So that when you see these creatures behaving like that, and up until now all you've ever seen werewolves do are charge at people and lunge and bite, and you can just see them on the edge waiting and surrounding them, biding their time and stuff like that. Ooh, it really does send the shivers down you. So as hard as I was being in the first half of this video on the film for wasted potential, the werewolves they got on show are creatures that you won't have seen exactly their like anywhere before. So that is a big success for a werewolf movie, showing us something new, and not only new, but genuinely creepy, genuinely chilling as well. So it's not a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. I'm being so hard on it because I so desperately want more great werewolf movies, not just competent werewolf movies. But there is a lot of fun to be had with Howl. Make no mistake.